Welcome to the Business of Being You podcast, a podcast about authenticity and the different ways people choose to be authentic. My name is Marco Benitez, also known as Coach Marco B. I'm very excited to have this episode today, this conversation. Today's topic is unlikely encounters and how they can change your life and others. I'm really excited to have my guest today. She's one of my favorite people in the whole world. Her name is Liz Gannon Graydon. She's a very longtime friend. I'll tell you a little bit about her. So Liz Gannon Graydon is co-founder and president of What Better Looks Like, a nonprofit organization that taps into the creative potential of people to help solve problems in their local communities. She's also the national chair for the Peace Alliance, whose work revolves around shifting to a culture of peace. And she also started what she calls her Tea Party, which is held in Bryant Park, and that's going to be a big part of the root around our conversation today. So welcome, Miss Liz Gannon Graydon.
Nice to see you, Marco. We've had so many beautiful conversations over the years, and I'm looking forward to this one.
Absolutely. So the topic for today is unlikely encounters and how they can change your life and others. And we ran into each other after many years, maybe about a year or two ago at a cafe, and you were sharing what you were doing with the Tea Party. It just seems like such a simple thing to do, but in today's society, and especially in New York, it's such an uncommon thing to do. First, tell me a little bit about it, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the background, how it got started.
Yeah, basically, we, for 9 years now, Marco, for 9 years, generally on Thursdays, weather permitting, I hold a tea party in Bryant Park, which is for those of you who aren't New Yorkers, it's 1 block away from Times Square. It's really in the crossroads of New York City. It's in the heart of the city. And I pack about 30 cups, and it started out as my mother's and grandmother's china, but I've had donations from many people over the years. I pack up china cups, I put down tablecloths, I bake fresh goods myself, an assortment that are usually seasonal, and I bring tea, and we have a tea party. And it's funny, we usually start around noon, and in warm weather we go till the park closes, 9 or 10 at night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. So how did this get started?
I can tell you the way the event started and then how the tea party started.
Mm-hmm.
I made a decision to homeschool my own kids, and it was back in 2014. It was I was just looking for free things to do with my kids in the city. And on Thursdays in the summers in Bryant Park, they have something called Broadway in Bryant Park. And basically what they do is there's a stage, and the actual Broadway stars come and they sing and they perform for an hour at lunchtime. And so I put it out on Facebook, and I just said, I'm going to pack a lunch. I'm going to be in Bryant Park if anyone wants to come. And people showed up. And I think it was 5 or 6 weeks in a row we were there. And I thought, well, when the summer ends, I'm going to have to stop doing it. But because I homeschool my boys, I could adjust the schedule. And so we just kind of committed, as long as the weather was okay, we were going to still do this once a week.
Right.
But the shift happened at the end of the summer, the beginning of the fall. And it was one of those nights when you first feel that chill where you know fall is coming.
Yeah.
And a couple of my friends went to get coffee. They went to get cups of coffee. And one of the women who was sitting with me said, you know what, I really prefer tea. I said, I do too. I'm a tea drinker. And she said, but I only like drinking tea out of a real china cup.
Mm.
And we'd all been meeting weekly. And I said, you know what? I have all these cups that were my mother's and grandmother's, and I never use them. They sit in a cabinet. So I said, next week, I'll pack 2 cups. I'll bring a thermos of tea, and we'll just have a little tea party. We'll just have tea in the park.
Right.
And as I was getting ready, I thought, I had these really beautiful, a friend had given me really big linen napkins. And I thought, I can put those down on the table. And I thought, if I'm bringing 2 cups, I may as well bring 4, because you don't know if someone else is going to show up.
Right.
And I thought, and I'll make a blueberry bread, and I'll just bring it. And we were sitting there, Marco, and are you familiar with Bryant Park?
Yeah, a few times.
So in the summertime, it gets really crowded, and it was still the end of the summer, and it was lunchtime. And there was a gentleman sitting next to us, and he was trying to eat his lunch on his lap because there were no free tables. And we had room at the table, so I just asked if he wanted to join us. And it turned out he spoke not one word of English. I said, thank goodness for Google Translate. He was an actor, and he was in from Turkey. And thing is, he was an actor in Turkey, and he said, but if you want to be an actor, you need to come to New York. So he had auditioned for a school here in New York. He got in. But he couldn't act in English yet. So during the days he was going to English classes, and at night he was taking his acting classes. So he asked, we were talking, and it was a lot. This is the first unexpected encounter, right? I know that was where, so it was an unexpected encounter that started the whole thing. Right. And so I asked him if he had a favorite actor, and he said, yes, Al Pacino. And I went, me too. Oh my God, I love Al Pacino. So there was that commonality right there. Yeah. And so he asked if I had ever had Turkish tea. And I said, not that I know of. And my friend said, well, come next week and bring some Turkish tea. We'll be here next week. And he said, next week? And she said, yes. And he said, can I bring my friends? And he brought his whole class. There were like 10 or 12 of them from his English as a second language class. And they came, and it was fun. And so that was the beginning of the tea party.
That's simple.
And it was that simple. But at the same time, it's where the intentionality shifted at the same time. And we can go back into this. I know you want to talk a little bit about background. My father, who'd been a college professor and an activist in the 60s, started to delve into Alzheimer's. And he had always taught me about the beloved community, right? That was a really important concept to him. It was an idea that he got from Martin Luther King. And so as he started to go into Alzheimer's, and we would gather every week, I decided what had started kind of unintentionally in this very simple way, I was going to do intentionally for as long as I could, as an exercise almost in beloved community, to honor my dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, what I find most interesting is that, you know, something like this, which became a thing and eventually became something more powerful and influential, not just for yourself, but also for the people in whom you engage with, is that it didn't take a lot of planning. It was a very casual, kind of passing comment. Yeah. And I found that myself in my life, and that, you know, I think this, what did they say? It was a quote a long time ago. I heard. It said something like, you know, when God speaks to you, he doesn't roar like a lion. He whispers. He whispers in the wind or something like that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I feel that's just another example, what you share, that's another example of how that happens. It was just very casual. Like, do you want to do this? Yes. Sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know? And it also brings to mind some of these, how opportunities work, how opportunity knocks. Opportunity is not, you know, the IRS knocking at your door, or someone trying to get you, you know, when you borrow the lawnmower, you to return it. You know, sometimes opportunity knocks, you know, the way Amazon knocks during the holidays. It's like, drop the package, ding, and if you're
oh my God, I love that.
You know, you drop the package, ding, and if you don't come on time, someone's gonna snatch it. You know?
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
So that's really interesting. So when did you really start to feel like it was really starting to take off? Like this was like, because when we spoke about this before, it was more of something like, sure, why not?
Yep.
And then it seemed to turn into something like, I need to continue to do this.
Yeah, it became, well, it just was fun. Right. So the first few years, so 2014, 15, 16, and 17, right? It was just fun. And we would go as long as the weather permitted. And then something really powerful happened in the middle of 2017. A woman was walking by, and she said, I see you here regularly. Again, right? Those encounters. Right. And can you just tell me what's going on? And it turns out she worked at the park. And she said, wow, she said, do you think I could give your phone number to our PR department? Because they might want to connect with you. Yeah. And so I talked to the gentleman who runs their PR department, and he said, I have a friend, or I have a contact at the New York Times. who does feature stories, and I think he might be interested in this. Would you be willing to talk to him? So I said, sure. And Marco, it was so interesting to me. I talked to the gentleman, a lovely guy. His name is Corey Kilgannon.
Oh.
And we talked on the phone a couple of times, and he showed up, and he said he was going to have a photographer. He was going to talk to us for a little bit. And I thought he was maybe going to stay for a few minutes, take a few pictures. And he ended up staying the whole afternoon. He stayed for a few hours.
Oh.
And it was in October. It was in October of 2017. And he said he would let me know when they were publishing it. And he didn't contact me. He didn't contact me. And I thought maybe they decided not to use it. It's not a time-sensitive story. And then he reached out to me, Marco. I don't know that I ever told this part of the story to you. He reached out to me and he said, I want to tell you, it seems like it's this time of year, because around December we would wrap it up.
Right.
Until spring. And he said, I had to try to tell the story in a way that was true, but didn't make it sound as good as it is, because you would be so inundated with people and it would get ruined.
Wow.
And he said, so I'm just going to say this to you. I'm going to publish it as close to the end of the year as I can. And you'll get a rush of people. But then when you come back in the spring, the people who are supposed to be there will show up.
Oh. Wow.
And he took such care of me, and I've never forgotten that. Each year I had actually want to send him another message. I just kind of write and thank him.
Right.
Yeah, so that's how the energy shifted.
Right.
Because there were people that came because they read the article.
Right.
And that brought a whole bunch of like truly magical people into my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Was it
Go ahead.
I want to ask you, was it all nice people? Because, it's New York and it's the city and it's a park, and New York we have a reputation here.
Yeah,
was it mostly good? Were there any awkward moments?
I will say this. I have found very few moments that I felt I couldn't handle. I have discovered something about myself, Marco, and this is a new thing I'm discovering. You can make fun of me, you can call me out on things, you can call out my husband and my kids, and I will defend them. But there's one thing that I get really defensive about, and it's New York.
Mm.
I'm a lifelong New Yorker, right? Born and raised in New York. And yes, when people hear about New York, and it's the center of New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But New Yorkers really are beautiful people. That's my experience of New Yorkers.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I find is we sit in a little area, and if you don't know us, you might not know you were supposed to be included. So a lot of people walk by, and the only kind of rule I have, there aren't any rules, is if you smile, if you acknowledge us, I invite you to sit down.
Right.
And that's everybody who walks by. And the thing is, you mostly don't know. Have there been times when there were people that I felt I needed to guide one way or another? Yes. People who I thought maybe were a little, I don't want to say dangerous. I never felt in danger, but people that felt a little less stable.
Right.
I would sometimes invite them to sit at my end of the table and offer them a cup of tea and then guide them on their way.
Right.
I mean, there are people, and I'll be honest, right? People talk about post-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
For 1 year, we didn't do the park. That one summer, we didn't do the park. We did it on Zoom with some regulars.
Oh, interesting.
But each year, we've gotten at least some in person.
Right.
And there's definitely a feeling of unease more in the city. That is the reality.
Right.
My dad gave me a gift when I was 9 years old, Marco. He was taking me to the Madison Square Garden for the horse show,
right,
in the city, and he taught in Manhattan. And so it was only me. He was taking me in for my birthday, so it was just none of my siblings were there. It was myself and him on the Long Island Railroad into Penn Station. And when we got there, it was really scary, right? Because there's the rush of people on the platform, and I'm holding my dad's hand. And he said, we can just wait till everyone goes. And then we were walking gently through Penn Station. And he stopped at a point where there was a person, I guess we would call homeless, right, sitting there, unhoused. And my father walked up to him and he had money in his hand, but he did something that I didn't realize till later was unique. He put the money in the man's hand, but he took the man's hand and clasped both of the man's hands.
Mm.
And he said, "Here you go, my friend." And Mark, I'll never forget it. I watched the man's eyes kind of clear for a second and then tear up.
Mm.
And he said, "Why did you call me friend?" And he said, "Because you are my friend." And I don't remember the horse. I don't remember anything else.
Right.
I just never forgot that moment.
Right.
And so I have found that even people who seem, living on the street or on some kind of on edge, if you invite them to sit down and have a cup of tea, even for a little bit, you can watch something shift.
Right.
When they understand that they're welcome, when they understand that they can drink out of a beautiful teacup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there are a couple of things that I learned. And the Tea Party helped me do that. It's interesting. I talk a lot about my father's story. He was so influential to me as a child, right? He believed in the beloved community. He was very much interested in making systemic change. And my mother was an emergency room nurse in Greenwich Village. So she used to take care of what people used to refer to as the Bowery bums, Yeah, I don't know if you ever heard that phrase, right? And she would minister to the homeless.
Mm.
And they had these very different views of life. My father would talk about systemic change and love. And my mother used to say, "You can't change the world. You can only change the person in front of you. That's the only person you can reach."
Mm.
And when I was younger, I loved my father's vision, right? But what I see myself doing, the Tea Party started out as my father's, the vision in honor of my dad, but I find myself doing more and more what my mother did, like really healing to people by doing that.
Yeah.
Like my sister was also a nurse at the beginning of the AIDS crisis, and I remember like the importance of touching people. And I'll tell you a decision I made. There were a couple of people who came regularly, 3 of them, who were unhoused. And so during COVID, I didn't see them, obviously, and I didn't know if they survived or anything. And then when I was headed in for the first in-person tea party last summer, I'll just say this. I don't believe kind of in a God in the sky, like the patriarchal God in the sky, but when I was a little girl, I saw the play Fiddler on the Roof, and I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No.
But the main character just talks to God in this very loving way, right? "You couldn't make me a rich man,"
Right.
And so I had this very kind of dialogue with God all the time, right? Even though I would say my understanding of kind of the relationship is more complex than that. But when I was headed into the city for the first one of Tea Party post-COVID, I really said to God, if I see any of my friends who have been living on the street, I am going to hug them because they're going to need to be hugged, because no one has probably touched them in a year. So I said, whatever you have to do to protect me. Now we were masked, we did everything, right? We were out in the open. And when the first gentleman came up and he saw me and I saw him, I did go and I hugged him. And I think it's exactly what you said. I think we have a dearth, especially live in a big city, a dearth of healthy human touch.
Yeah.
And healthy human touch is so important. Of course, I asked his permission. I said, "May I hug you?" Right?
Yeah.
But I think you named something really important. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tricky too,
Yes.
It's a difficult thing to navigate,
Yeah, and I was, a precaution, and I was wearing gloves. I tried to do everything as smart as I could, and but I think there are a couple of things, and I'm looking at your beautiful background. I think a couple of reasons it works is I think we need beauty, especially in a big city, right? A lot of people aren't really. Beauty can be embraced as a superficial thing, but it isn't a superficial thing. To connect in deep beauty, and when people pass by and there are china cups and they're all different, but they're all beautiful. And the tablecloths, and I put, whatever I baked out on lovely platters. I think there's this idea that you can connect with your own beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the beauty matters.
Yeah.
As much as the welcoming and the tea and the yeah.
Yeah, I say something similar in when it comes to smiles. I love people's smiles, and some of the most beautiful smiles I've ever seen. These people do not have nice teeth. These people sometimes don't even have more than three teeth, but a smile is much more than the teeth. The smile is it's the eyes, and it's more than anything else. It's the energy.
Yeah.
It's the energy. It's how it's conveyed. And I think that's similar to what you're saying.
I was going to say, I think the other thing that intrigues people before they know that everyone is invited in is if you take a look at the table, they're trying to figure out what all those people are doing at the same table. Because it's people of very different ages, it's people of very different, obvious and visually, right? Socioeconomic, different ethnicities. And I think when you see us all, I think people stop and stare first because they're trying to say, what has all these people in common? And we do have regulars. There are about 15 to 20 people who show up regularly. But there's every week, there are people who just drop by and maybe have only ever been there once. Yeah.
How many people do you think have been to the Tea Party total since the beginning?
Roughly 20, 25 a day. And from 17 till COVID, we were doing it weekly because we had an inside home. 20 times 50.
That's a lot.
Yeah. For 10 years. For 10 years, right? Yeah.
20 times 50, was that 1,000?
Yeah. So thousands. No, that's fine.
I'll edit it out. If I get it wrong, I'll just put like the word.
No, 2 times 5 is 10, add 2 zeros. That's
right,
yeah. Thousands.
2,000 people. Wow.
Yeah, thousands.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any encounters stand out? Like we talked about can change your life and can change others. And we talked about the person who put you in contact with the Times and they did that piece on you and then the Tea Party. And you talked about the Turkish actor. Are there any encounters that really just stand out for you that really had made an impact, something that stays with you even till now?
Yeah. I if I have to say one person, it's my friend Andy. It's my friend Andy because Andy took the Tea Party to a different level.
Was he your friend before that?
Nope. I'm going to tell you how. So the Tea Party, the New York Times article ran the end of 2017. My father passed in January of 2018. And so March, I always, before we had a winter home and we're not doing indoor events during COVID. So we'll take that kind of January off. And I say that first 50-degree day in March, I'm at the Tea Party, right? So it was March of 2018, we started back up again. But in June of 2018, someone walked up to me with this giant Tea Party hat made of paper. It was huge. It was beautiful. And he said, I found you. And I said, do I know you? And he said, no. But I read the New York Times article and I thought I saw a kindred spirit. So I took a chance to come by. And I sat with Andy, and he had lost his mom the same month that I'd lost my dad. So we were just talking and serving tea, and he was mostly observing. And Andy gave me, he was the one that coined the term beloved community, TEA. He's an artist. And he did this thing that he thought that I would appreciate because it was a similar thing. Every year, Andy, he reclaims literal garbage, right? He dumpster dives and will take out things that have been discarded. Paper and high-end fashion bags and different things.
Right.
And he turns them into hats. And when I say hats, I'm talking about fancy, beautiful hats. And during for 15 or 16 years, I may get that wrong, he would spend the whole year making hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hats. And we keep them in the storage little space in the basement of his tiny apartment. And on Easter every year, he would go to Fifth Avenue with do you know when you have in stores they have the racks where they move clothing?
Yep.
He would have racks and racks with these hats hanging,
Right.
and he would just pass them out to anyone who came to the Easter parade for free.
Oh,
and they were works of art. I mean, beautiful, brilliant works of art. And he said, I do it once a year. And I just spend my time just connecting with people. And I spend all day Easter kind of connecting with the public in this joyful exchange. And he said, and when I read that you do this every week, I wanted to know you. And he gave me a metaphor, Marco, and he was the one that really said, no, we have to keep this going all year. And he had worked at Bank of America, which is right across the street from Bryant Park. And he said, there's an atrium there, so we can go there when it's raining, but it's not heated. And then over the skating rink in Bryant Park was a heated place that's now not open to the public. And he went about really tending to the Tea Party in a way that I didn't feel like it was me running this thing, that he was the person that made me understand that although I showed up with the tea, the plates, the cup, and everything, that there was nothing about it that was about me. That was when we shifted to being a real community.
Right.
And there were a bunch of people that came because of the New York Times article. The ones that stayed, Corey Kilgannon was exactly right, were the ones who came for the right reason. They were seeking that type of community in a city that can seem so unfriendly.
Yeah.
And that core of people are kind of the ones that are still, we call ourselves the regulars, right? And one was a tour guide. He's a tour guide. He's a bus tour guide in New York. And so, but it was Andy who said that. I started to think about when I do work, right? And you see this too. You and I have talked about this. The people you deal with, or not deal with, the people I'm going to say minister to. That's kind of my language. Some of them have been or felt discarded, right? Or not seen or not loved. And I got this powerful metaphor, Marco. He literally goes around, and there was one time, do you know cash register receipt tape rolls?
Yep.
He just found that someone had just thrown those out. They hadn't been used. They were still in plastic. He took a bunch of those. He feathered them and made this hat that looks like this glory. I mean, he would take these things that other people had discarded and turn them into things of beauties that you thought, why aren't we always like this? Right. And I thought, that's what I want to do with What Better Looks Like. Like with my work, I want to look at either people, systems, things that either have been discarded or should be discarded, and transform them in ways that make them so much more beautiful and powerful, and the vision of how we want to be living, that we wonder, why don't we always do that? Why haven't we always done it this way? Yeah. So I would say, I mean, so many magical ones, but Andy's the one that probably shifted us most to the intentionality of community.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any place or any thoughts of combining the Tea Party with the other peace work you do? I mean, because just in the way you're describing it now, I mean, this is something that the concept can be shared in other cities.
Yes.
This could be the TED Talk of the peace community. Has there ever been any interest in other people doing this in other places, in other cities?
Yeah, it is interesting. I think about this a lot. It's funny. I was just invited through What Better Looks Like to do a workshop that I do with the Girl Scouts, and the woman who was doing the program, I know her boss, I guess is her. And she said, ask Liz about the Tea Party, and I told her. And I was doing 2 different storytelling programs with the Girl Scouts, one with 5 to 7-year-olds and one with 9 to 12-year-olds. And they said, would you do the tea party? So I brought the cups to the workshop. And I let the girls pick their tea cup, and they were so enchanted, right? And they got a little baked good. I have been thinking about modeling it. And I think the tricky part, I think also what makes it work is it truly echoes that idea of the beloved community. The beloved community is based on the fact that no one's left out, right? When Martin Luther King used to talk about systems, whether that be justice systems, education systems, healthcare systems, the idea of the beloved community is we have to build systems where no one is left out.
Right.
and that's a model we've created at the Tea Party. And that's why I feel authentic using that term, beloved community. No one's left out, everyone's welcome, everyone's included. I do think there probably is a way to replicate it, and people have reached out. Like when I was in just a few weeks ago, a woman was walking by and asked what we were doing, and she said, "Oh my God, I just gave away my grandmother's teacups. I could have had a tea party." Wow. So I think seeds get planted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I got a lot of time left. I think we'll probably figure that out. And I do try to weave both the work with the Peace Alliance, my own work with What Better looks like, and the Tea Party, as I don't see them as separate. It's all one woven cloth.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
So when you think back about now that we know that's thousands of people, was there anyone, I mean, you also spoke about Andy and how he had been looking for you, but are there any other encounters that you had with someone where they reached out to you and they really expressed gratitude, or this is something that they needed, or something that changed them or connected them in some way?
Yeah, a lot of people. I can tell you one person was walking by. It was it was a rainy day and we were in the atrium across the street at Bank of America, but it's the same tables and the same chairs, and we'd set it up and we had the tea party. And a woman just looked through the glass and she had a friend with her. And she walked in and she said, "I just wanted to say how lovely those teacups are." And I said, "Would you like to join us?" And she said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, would you like to join us?" And she kind of had to talk her friend into it a little bit, right? And
that's the New Yorker right there.
That is the New Yorker, yeah. And so they sat down, and it turned out it was interesting. It was a really hard time for her. She's an actress and she worked in New York, and her husband had recently passed, and so she lost her apartment and she was newly homeless.
Oh.
And she said, "One of my great joys was sitting around every day with my husband having a cup of tea."
Oh.
And we stayed in touch, and it turned out that a week after she saw us, she was doing a play reading of a new play she was working on. And we, a couple of us from the Tea Party were able to get tickets. And I've stayed in touch with her. She's been back during COVID. Even we didn't see one another. She went to stay with family out of state.
Oh.
But she really said, in that moment when I just needed to connect with love and beauty, this was there, and we've been there for one another. We've been there for one another. Yeah.
That's nice.
Thank you.
I would imagine that just meeting so many people and having these casual, natural encounters, and the topic of the podcast, the focus of my work and what I do is authenticity. I would imagine that you've seen authenticity in so many different ways in the people that you've met. What are the common threads that you've found across the people that you've met?
I love this question so much, Marco, and I know that I have expressed to you, I love authenticity is such a powerful word. And what I realized was there was a way that I start if someone I don't know shows up. I just kind of started asking a question, and I don't know what made me ask it the first time, but it's kind of my go-to question, and it unlocks exactly what I think you were talking about. And I just, if someone sits down, and I don't know if I'll ever see them again or what, and I always start with, is there something about yourself you'd like me to know?
Mm.
And what I love about the question is it gets to the key of the authentic self, Marco, because no one has a prepared answer for that.
Yeah.
We meet people all day. People ask us, "What do you do? What's your favorite thing? Do you have an?" But it's not a question people have a prepared answer for.
Right.
So I find people right away. And do you know what's interesting for me? This is the common thread. If you're asking me, I didn't think about it in that term till just now. They want to make a genuine answer to give a genuine effort to give a genuine answer to a genuine question.
Right.
Right. And so I was talking to one guy, and I was sitting by myself at the table once, and there was a guy a couple of tables away really screaming into his cell phone, screaming. And I couldn't tell what he was saying. I couldn't hear anything. It was like a busy day, but he was in distress. And as he walked by, I asked him, I just said, "It looks like you could use a cup of tea. Can I offer you a cup of tea?" And he said, yeah, I would like that. And we sat down. And all I said is there something about yourself you'd like me to know? And he said, yes. He said, my daughter's going through some really difficult mental health issues, and I can't find anyone who can help me. And it's so frustrating. And we just sat. We just said, and he brought me his authentic self right away because I asked him an authentic question. Yeah. And you can take that question on any level, right? People have told me, oh my God, I love gardening.
Yeah.
But I find they really take their time and they give you a genuine question answer because they recognize that you've asked them a genuine question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the most important lessons that you feel you've learned so far in all of these encounters that you've had with people?
I will tell you one thing. And as I said, you go each week and each encounter pushes you forward.
Yeah.
But a gentleman said something. A friend of mine, I had done some workshops with him, and he brought a friend of his to the table, and his friend was a rabbi. And we were sitting there for a while. And he at one point he said, this feels like Shabbat dinner. This feels like, right? And from that moment on, I never didn't think of it that way. I thought this is a sacred space. And I try to make it a sacred space. And I always was intentional about creating the space, but then I was more about that idea that when you claim something as sacred space, it makes it a little different. And so it's the importance of that deep intentionality. And the other thing that I had a friend just named for me recently, Marco, and I'm grappling with it because have you ever had the experience of someone reflecting back to you the way they see you and it doesn't match how you see yourself?
Yeah.
I mean, in positive and negative ways,
Of course.
But I was talking to a friend recently and I just sought out some advice and they said something to me and I said, thank you for that. You made me brave. And this person is not a New Yorker, right? And this friend said to me, you think you need someone to make you brave? She said, for years, you sit in the middle of what some people might think the most dangerous city in the world. And you serve tea to everyone who walks by and you welcome it. She said, you think you need help being brave? Like, that's so brave. And it never occurred to me to think that that was a brave thing to do.
Sure. Well, in New York, we don't use the word brave. We say
No.
crazy. We say crazy, like, girl, you crazy. You telling me
No,
you
so that's
you sitting up with strangers giving them tea out your own cups?
And so it's funny. So to me, and this is the other thing, I will just say this is another intentionality, because I wanted people to feel comfortable drinking out of like a Limoges China cup in the park, because a lot of times people get concerned. They're like, what if it breaks? And I always say to them, every year something breaks. And behind me, underneath the table, like right behind me, I have a giant thing of broken cups and saucers. And the plan, and I think because next year is our 10th year, and Andy is an artist, and we have a whole bunch of artists, I always said to them, I'm saving the pieces, and we're going to turn it into a mosaic.
Nice.
So I said, so if nothing breaks, you've had a drink out of this beautiful cup, but if it does, the worst thing that's going to happen is it's going to become a piece of art.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'd love to see. I want to see what that turns out to be.
Yeah, well, I'll let you know when we start working on it. Maybe you could break away. So that's it. So I would say what I've learned over the years about myself and about that is, I'll quote a friend. My husband made a short film years ago on peace building. And there was a gentleman named Tenny Gross, and he does peace building under tough circumstances. He's worked with gang members. He's currently working in Chicago. And when my husband asked him if there's anything any last words he wanted to say, he said, if you're going to inspire hope in people, you had better be there when they need you. So I think for me, there has to be that intentionality of showing up. There are days I don't feel like getting up and don't feel like baking and don't feel like getting on the train and getting into the city. But when you know that there are people in a community that's very mutual, like it's this beautiful mutual community, and that people are counting on you, and that's what keeps me going.
Wow.
Yeah.
What does authenticity mean to you?
For me, Marco, what I've come to understand about myself, I feel like every 2-year-old comes to you with who they are, right? And a friend recently said that other people put masks on you. It's not necessarily that you put masks on yourself, right? That we
Yeah.
build these things. And then I think we spend a lot of time trying to get back to who we knew we were when we were 2, right? And so for me, authenticity is when you strip away everything that isn't who or what you came to the planet to be. And we could name it. I'll give you a true example. When I started doing What Better Looks Like, when we built up the tenets, one of the ideas came from my husband, and he said he felt everyone came to the planet to be a healer, an artist, or a teacher, or some combination of the three, right? I think of the acronym HAT, healer, artist, teacher.
Okay. Yeah.
So in that work, I asked people, really, one of the workshops revolves around asking people, what do you think you're here to heal, create, or teach? Right? And when I started this work, my boys, who are now 23 and 20, almost 21, were 5 and 8. And I asked my 8-year-old, what do you think you came to heal, create, or teach? And he said, I came to heal anger. There are too many angry people on this planet. And my 5-year-old said, I came to teach people we have to stop killing gorillas. And I don't know why that mattered to him so much. Right. But we all know that when you talk to a 2-year-old, they are authentically themselves. And for me, authenticity is just remembering who we were when we were 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And creating new connections was so simple back then. I remember watching my kids when they were a little bit younger. My daughter's 10 and my son is 15 right now.
Yeah.
But when they were younger, they reminded me how easy it was to make friends. How easy was it? You're literally in the park. You walk up to a kid, they say, hey, do you want to be my friend? Like, yeah, okay, you're my friend now. And then they go and they introduce you to the parents. Like, hey, this is so and so. He's my new friend. Like, okay, and that's it. And then hence, we shared the New York experience. Where
It's so true.
Sometimes walking by people in the street, I just say good morning because I'm so used to saying good morning at work. It's good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's like everything. It's like reflex. There's no thought involved anymore. It's just greeting everyone with good morning. And so sometimes I'm outside and like good morning, and you get like that look, like, do I know you?
So I will tell you, someone said something that was so true. It was a person who only attended one tea party, and he was from the South. And we were sitting there and we were having this lovely conversation, and he was living in the North now. And he said, and I was talking about that idea that people have this idea of what New Yorkers are and who we are. And I said, I think we're busy, and New York is difficult citizenry, right? Because it's crowded and people rush by you. It's exactly what you said. And he said, what I find in New York is if I'm on the subway and I'm carrying 7 bags and I get to the bottom of the steps and I'm struggling, 6 people will grab my bags, walk them to the top of the steps, put them down. They don't want to know how my day is. They don't ask me about my aunt, but they'll carry the bags up the steps.
Yeah.
He said, where I'm from, if I'm walking around carrying 7 bags, someone might come up to me and say, how you doing, honey? And I'll say, well, I'm carrying these 7 bags. And they'll say, yeah, you are, and walk away. And that rings true for me. And I'm not saying that as the generation. I love everybody. But New Yorkers, I feel like if you can get us to slow down enough, and that's the beauty of the Tea Party. If you can get us to slow down enough, we can be human to one another.
Yeah.
But that's the key. And that's why I said, I think if I was handing out tea in paper cups, it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
You have to slow down enough to sit at the tea party.
Yeah, this is the best place to do a tea party. It's so, it's New York is just like that. I love New York. I can't imagine myself living anywhere else. It's a love-hate relationship.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. And like
it's hard.
You have your bad days, and you're just like, at this place, I'm gonna leave. You're like, you're able to go to a store at 10 o'clock at night, and it's like, all right, I'll stick around for a little bit longer. And then you find things you come across unexpectedly, things like the tea party, when you're in the train station, the live music, people outside, they just put the radio on. Now it's on their cell phones. People just start dancing in the street. That's my people.
That's it. It comes down to that, like exactly kind of the theme of the talk, right? What are the unexpected encounters? Because where I live now, I live on Long Island. and everyone gets in their car and their driveway and they drive wherever they're going. And you don't have as many unexpected encounters. That is the beauty. It's exactly what you named as the theme of the talk, right?
Yeah.
You have so many unexpected encounters in New York, and it's kind of how you, especially if you sit there on purpose and just say,
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. And to people watching or listening to this who are not from New York, it ain't bad here. It's like every place else. You know, you gotta use your,
Like
you gotta be smart about it, you know?
You do.
Yeah. You gotta lock your doors out here. But
Yes,
it's cool,
that we do. That we
Yeah.
do.
But it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So, what do you want to share? One final message, and then I want you to tell us a little bit about how people can get in contact with you, or maybe to donate to the Tea Party or the work that you do, or to find out more about the peace projects.
Yeah.
But hit me with like some words of wisdom for whoever's listening to this, about anything, about authenticity, about peace, about encounters. What do you feel?
Yeah,
Is
for
a message
me,
you'd like to share?
yeah, for me, I'm going to share that thing I've really been weighing is that balance between the lesson of my father and the lesson of my mother, right? That that there's this the fast I will tell this. I have a couple of teachers that taught me in peace building, and both of them said some version of the fastest way to change the world is to change the story that we tell. And so for me, the story that I can sit in New York and create this space in this way, it's such an unexpected story, right? Like people. So to me, think about the story you're here to tell, and what could you switch, right? How would you change the story? The story is everyone's too busy, everyone is, or the world, people are horrible, or like we can change the story, and it starts just by what's the better story you'd like to tell. So for me, that's it. And it's interesting to me, right? I have two organizations, like I said, that are my heart and soul. And one is, you can find it, whatbetterlookslike.org. And we do work. One of my co-founders is from Rwanda. So we do both local work, but also a project in Rwanda. And you can find that out. And Peace Alliance, one word, right? peacealliance.org. But what's interesting for me, and this is the last thing I'll probably say to you, is if people want to come to the tea party and share and bring tea or bring cups or whatever, like I accept that. But I've just drawn this line that I don't accept donations for the tea party, because to me, it's my gift.
Right.
It's kind of my gift to the beloved community. I can sit, I can show up, and it's my gift. And so if you want to come and be in person and do something, I say bring something to share. But yeah, that's kind of the philosophy. Show up, be here, and share what you have.
That's awesome. Well, Liz, thank you so much for being a part of this.
I'm so grateful.
I know, it's always so beautiful talking to you. And
yeah,
we've had coffee and tea.
We sure have.
Not at the tea party, but we've had coffee and tea a few times. And our conversation's always great. And I'm so grateful to you and appreciative to you.
Back at you.
And that's our episode for today. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation, that you found it enlightening, and it encourages you to go out and to just start a conversation with someone, as long as you feel comfortable and safe with it, and do something that's pretty neutral, like offer someone a cup of tea, or just a simple good morning or hello. So once again, my name is Marco Benitez, also known as Coach Marco B. I'm an authenticity coach, and I help people to live unapologetically themselves the way they want to, and to feel okay with the things that they want, so they can reduce their stress and live a life that's inspiring to them and others. So I'll leave you with the quote of Jim Carrey, which is, you could fail at something you don't want, so you might as well take a chance at something you love. And remember to mind your business, the business of being you.
I love it. Take care.